to celebrate Black History Month. And MOBE will celebrate its 30th anniversary this year in 2022, April 21st to April 22nd. We will have a conference in celebration. You can sign up now. We've had my favorite person in Black history is Percy Sutton, and I was able to meet him through MOBE, at MOBE. So we've had a lot of great historical figures, from Russell Simmons to L.A. Reid to Kathy Hughes at MOBE. And so this segment is called The State of Black America. And, we're going through a lot of things. We've seen a lot of stuff that's happening in the world right now, even with Ukraine. We see that Black people still are not treated equally. But we're in the best of times and the worst of times. And I'm going to let Pat Prescott, our moderator for tonight, bring us in and put us up on what's going on today. So Pat Prescott is a host of the morning show at 94 or was the host of the morning show at 94.7 The Wave in Los Angeles. She is a native of Hampton, Virginia, and a graduate of Northwestern University. She started her radio career at WYLD-FM in New Orleans and spent most of her career in New York as morning show host, news announcer, talk show host, and public affairs director at WRVR, WBLS, WLIB, and jazz station CD 101.9. Today marks her return to the New York, New Jersey airwaves on WBGO radio with her show Favorite Things, which can be heard Monday to Friday, 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern on 88.3 FM and worldwide on WBGO.org. Before being named solo morning host at The Wave, Pat co-hosted the show with Dave Coz for 6 years and Brian McKnight for 3 years. Pat is very active in the community and has received numerous awards and citations for her music industry and community contributions. Please welcome our host for the State of Black America, Miss Pat Prescott. Thank you.
Thank you so much. By the way, I am still at 94.7 The Wave.
Oh, okay.
The wonders of modern technology.
Oh, so you got both now. That's great.
A lot that we can do.
Okay.
But thank you so much. And we want to thank all of you for being here with us to celebrate the final day of Black History Month during what is really an extraordinary time when national and international crises kind of seem to be everyday occurrences. And our resourcefulness, our strength of character, and our survival instincts are being tested more than ever before. And I just want to thank everyone at MOBE for continuing to present conversations of substance like the one that we're going to have today to help us to kind of find our way together and to share with each other all the tools that we need to move forward. And congratulations to MOBE on that upcoming 30th anniversary. We have an illustrious panel who we also would like to thank for taking time out of their very busy schedules to be with us this evening. So let's meet them and get started. First of all, we have Roslyn Daniels. Roslyn is president and founder of Black Health Matters, the leading health promotion and disease management online platform that's serving the needs of consumers, patients, and physicians. She is a tireless advocate for eliminating health disparities by improving the health literacy of African-American consumers and patients. In 2018, she launched the Black Health Matters Summit, which is a multi-platform initiative that features live TED Talk-inspired presentations that are led by by clinicians and by health advocates as well. Her organization also focuses on African-American men who have the lowest life expectancy and highest death rate in the United States, and we'll address some of that tonight. Next, we have Michael Lawson, who currently serves as the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Urban League. It is one of the oldest and most respected civil rights organizations in the country. He served in the Obama administration as ambassador to the Council of the International Civil Aviation Organization, a UN specialized agency. Previously, Mr. Lawson served on the board of airport commissioners for Los Angeles World Airports. He has also held positions of significant responsibility on several charitable, educational, and administrative boards and committees. And the work that they do here in our LA community is pretty unbelievable. And finally, we have Lanier Richardson. who is an assistant professor of professional practice in the Department of Management and Global Business at Rutgers Business School, where he also serves as the executive director of the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development. Lanier founded the Chicago Trend Corporation. It's a social enterprise that has raised over $17 million from impact investors to strengthen urban neighborhoods and to empower people of color to own commercial property. And he's going to have a report card for us on some of the corporations that we know very, very well in this country. All right. And we are going to start with Lanier. I have some questions for you right now. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
First of all, why don't you tell us about some of the main initiatives of the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development? What are you guys doing?
So it's my pleasure. The Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development really makes the connection between entrepreneurship and community revitalization. Our number one goal is to increase the number of entrepreneurs generating more than $1 million a year in annual recurring revenue. We make space, equipment, and resources available to entrepreneurs. 70% are people of color, over 60% are women. Our center is research and practitioner based, which means, we do deals and we write papers at the same time. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about some of the research we've done related to the big corporate commitments following the tragic death of George Floyd.
I'm kind of curious, how many $1 million business entrepreneurs do we have, and what are we looking at adding to that number?
So thank you for asking it. And again, our work is largely in the state of New Jersey. Rutgers is the state university of New Jersey. We set this little goal of getting 1,000 entrepreneurs to $1 million a year, a minimum of recurring revenue. And I always tell people that 1,000 times 1 million is 1 billion. So could our little center at Rutgers, working with Black and racially diverse and women entrepreneurs, have $1 billion of economic impact? We now have over 200, some at 10 million and more, some at 1.01 million. And I always tell people the $1 million is just a threshold. It's the first time, an entrepreneur can talk to outside capital, a bank, or some type of investor capital. Hopefully there's some owner's comp. Hopefully the owner can, employ other people. And so, that's our, sort of threshold of viability. And we're really excited about the 210 plus entrepreneurs that we have already at that level.
And actively growing those numbers.
Yes.
Yeah. Why do you do the corporate report card? I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. Explain how it's done, why it's done, and how it's done to people who are not aware of it. And explain the initial phase of this project, because I know you have more information to follow up on.
Yeah, and again, this is the cool thing about running a small research center is you can just do things and be entrepreneurial, even in the academic setting. I started hearing grumblings from grassroots organizations, from individuals that said, "Hey, I heard about these $50 billion of corporate commitments to racial justice commitments, but who's getting the money? Do you know anybody got the money? Who's honoring their commitments? Who do we believe is really going to come through?" And so my approach was to try, and I call it a pilot, because I do believe we'll do, probably 3 or 4 additional phases of this work over the next year or so. But my initial thought was to, put a survey together, highlight some of the good actors and some of the people and corporations that, we can learn from their best practices. And then to use that to have an honest conversation between corporate executives and community representatives. And so that was really our goal. We wanted to just, hey, who's really doing well? And inevitably, we found out who people did not think were doing well as well. And I call this a perception. What do people believe about these corporate partners and about these corporate announcements? And so we just accepted 31 sort of corporations that had recently made news headlines about their pledges to Black economic development initiatives. Many of the companies were in financial services or tech, some retail and consumer product companies as well. And over a 60-day period, we asked a little over 560 people that completed the survey, what they thought about 3 key areas. And I'm happy to go into that more detail as well.
Well, we hear a lot right now about DEI, about diversity and equity and inclusion. And I just hope that this is not just becoming another buzzword acronym, but I think that the work that you're doing is important because you're looking for accountability. And I don't know if I've heard a lot about any other organizations that are doing that. Have you? Are there others that you're working with as well?
We see, I think everybody's asking this question. And there's, formal research, that'll take, years to complete. But one thing, we have around the table conversations, right? And I wanted to get some early data points and ultimately talk to some of the corporate executives and not just get PR spin. And so, we now have a data point. We know a few of the companies that are really standing out. And, I'm hoping that over the next, few months, maybe on an additional MOBE event, we might get some of the really good corporate partners to come on and talk about what they're doing and why, they showed up highly ranked in the little survey that I did.
Well, why don't you give us an update now on what you've learned so far and also the perceptual study that followed this initial phase?
Yeah, if you would, I want to make sure we have. Great, thank you for the putting the slide on the on the screen. I hope it's big enough for people to see. We're gonna send this out on social media right after our conversation here tonight. But as I mentioned, we had over 500 people. And we basically we posed 3 questions. Are you aware of the corporate commitments that have been made? Second question, do you believe that these corporations, will honor their commitments? And the third question very simply was, do you know anybody Black as an entrepreneur or leading a Black-led organization or some business-related initiative that actually, received money? Again, my work and our work is around economic development issues and around getting capital to help businesses scale and grow, under the thesis that we create wealth by owning assets that generate revenue and assets that appreciate over time. So this first chart really highlights, and again, there are additional pages which, if you went down the chart, there were some people that made an announcement that nobody knew of. So, people were aware of the JP Morgan Chase commitment. 40% of the people that took the survey were aware of the JP Morgan Chase commitment. And I think JP Morgan Chase, with its commitment from its CEO, with a host of great executives that are out always talking about this work, funding grants, it doesn't surprise me because Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, has been such a visible, committed, voice about this work that most people are aware of JP Morgan Chase's commitment. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Bank of America. That rounded out the top list. Now, there are all kind of little nuances in here. Only 40% of the survey knew about JP Morgan Chase. It was the highest. And, less than 25% of people knew about Bank of America, which means all the other 31 companies were lower than 20% of people just knowing that they had a commitment and they had announced a commitment. Secondly, if you can change to the next slide, please. The second slide is, do people believe it? So, all right, we know they made this announcement. Who do we believe will really follow through? So we had, asked, entrepreneurs, people of color, who do they really believe will follow through? Google, top of the list, Microsoft, Amazon. Interestingly, the tech companies more so than the financial services company. People believe they're going to follow through on their commitments. JP Morgan Chase shows up again. Walmart, interestingly, showed up in the top 5, that people believe these are the companies that are actually going to honor their commitment. And then finally, this third slide was, it's like saying, well, hey, who do you know? Do you know anybody that actually got money? Do you know any entrepreneur that's gotten capital from any of these corporations subsequent to their announcement of their, pledge to racial justice, economic development related initiative. Do you know a Black entrepreneur, a Black-led organization, any type of Black business initiative that received capital? And if so, from who, right? Again, still small numbers, 10% to 15%. That means, 85% of people don't know anybody that's got money. But of the companies, Google, JP Morgan Chase, Facebook, Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs, I think, shows up here. A lot of people have, and they've been visible on their Black women entrepreneurship initiatives, and kudos to them. Amazon as well. So, there were 30 companies. Everyone else ranked lower than this. But what I hope to do now that we have a data point, again, is to facilitate some conversations with JP Morgan Chase and Google and, Goldman Sachs or Walmart, whoever the companies that showed up. So what are they doing? What is the reality? We know what people think. What's the reality of what they're doing? Why are they showing up? What recommendations might they have to their peers who are not showing up, as favorably? That's the next step, in our work here, as well as, to the extent that there were some people that were 1 or 2%, we might talk about them. We might invite them as well, because, they're going to say, well, people just don't know. Here's what we've done. But again, more than just poking fingers at it and saying they're not doing anything, we thought, let's have a conversation. And hopefully the folks who are doing stuff might do more, and they might be catalytic to the companies who also have made pledges about how they might do more to get capital to people of color leading business initiatives.
Well, one last quick question. That third slide, I guess, is really the one, because proof is in the pudding. What's next? How can we actually hold these corporations accountable for their actions and their policies?
Again, I'm hoping that the accountability is an interesting question. I hope that the corporate leaders and the executives are as concerned about their perception, how people perceive their brand. I'm hoping that in their shareholder meetings and their board meetings, people are saying, well, how are we doing? And again, because all we really have is the power to really shine light and make noise, right? That how you doing? How are you doing? We don't really have power to say you need to be doing it. But what I'm hoping is by talking to the good actors, hey, JP Morgan Chase, hey, Jamie Dimon, would you come on MOBE Mondays and bring some of the leadership team from JP Morgan Chase and tell us what you've done. And again, what can be informative and instructive to your other partners. It's like the catching flies with honey approach. And we'll see how that works initially. And if that doesn't, everybody knows the vinegar approach as well.
Yeah, we'll be watching to see what happens with that.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to Roslyn now. Roslyn, thank you so much for being with us this evening. I want you to explain to us, what is precision medicine and why do we need to know about that?
That's an excellent question. So if we're looking at a classic definition, precision medicine is a medical model that proposes the customization of healthcare with medical decisions, treatments, practices, or products being tailored to a subgroup of patients instead of one drug fits all model. So that basically means that with precision medicine, we would start to understand the basis from which African Americans have certain disease types. You might have heard that we have more rates of heart disease. We have higher rates of stroke. Black men have higher rates of prostate cancer. Well, why is that? So if we really bear down and science and pharma put more guidance and interest and revenue against understanding what the foundation of disease is through genetic testing and other types of tests, we will actually have answers to that. And having that type of information will be life-saving for us now and for our generations in the future.
Well, we know that Black Americans have a lot of chronic conditions, and we know that Black male life expectancy is not what we need for it to be. Let's talk a little bit about how we get better and how we can help our men to live longer.
So that's a funny story. I was just sharing that with a friend earlier that our work in terms of looking to help improve the health outcomes of African American men actually started from a personal observation, which was I'm a woman, I'm a sister of a certain age, and I was very interested in dating men of a certain age. So I consider myself to be fairly fly, right? I'm active. I go to church. I exercise. I go to smooth jazz festivals. I'm kind of like out and about doing it all. And I see you're laughing because you understand what I'm saying, Pat.
I
So when
do.
I was kind of like out there with my eyes half open, I'm trying to find Mr. Who is it? And he's got diabetes. He's overweight. He can't walk. He can't breathe because he was a smoker. Can't walk down the street. Can't hike. So when I looked at all of the issues, I was like, no wonder I can't meet somebody, and no one of my girlfriends can't meet someone.
Yeah, it's a good thing you didn't give up on him, though. You're gonna try to help us get better. We appreciate that a lot.
Thank you. So what we decided to do was we started to kind of peel back the layer, right? Because it's always that you want to blame the victim, you want to point fingers and say, well, you should do this and you should do that. And didn't your mama tell you should eat vegetables? So instead of pointing our finger, we started wanting to understand what the social determinants of health are. Why is it that the statistics are the way that they are for Black men? So when we kind of looked underneath the hood, we saw that, African American men, again, have high rates of hypertension. We saw that when they're admitted to hospitals, they die maybe within 5 to 6 days of being admitted. Again, we talked about prostate cancer. What about lung cancer? Other types of oncology issues. So there are just a myriad of things that combat the health of Black men. But one thing we knew that we could do was to help inspire Black men. So we decided to launch something called Black Health Matters Summits. And, our first partner in terms of in terms of fraternities was Kappa Alpha Psi Incorporated. We decided that we would actually run down to their offices. They were having a grand conclave nearby and really point out a lot of the stats. And it turned out that the actual grand pole mark was a prostate cancer survivor. And so there was a lot of interest in developing content there that would really be powerful. So we know that in terms of influence within the African American community, it's so much better to have those conversations between each other, having us decide versus people from the outside coming in and trying to talk to us about how we're going to manage certain chronic illnesses and how we're going to share that with family members so that we can kind of stop what's happening. In other words, let's destigmatize illness. Let's give men the pride and confidence to challenge the system. And so that was the goal of our partnering with Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated in 2019. And here we are in 2022. Not only are we producing healthcare summits for Kappa, but we're also doing it for Omega Psi Phi. And we're now entering into a partnership with Phi Beta Sigma Incorporated. So again, the whole idea is that, and they're all raising their hands. So we are looked upon as the catalyst to build capacity for these organizations that want to normalize the ability to raise their hand and to ask for help and to seek competent, culturally relevant care.
Yeah, well, I have two more quick questions to ask you. And one is, we are a people who have a tendency to go to the doctor if something is wrong. I want to know, how do we change that norm in regard to health and move from being reactive to being proactive?
So that's a good question. So again, we can't always point at the victim, right? So we've been socialized not to really come forward when something is wrong. Strength is a virtue in our community. So, Black women, we just bear down and keep going. We are just now being able to understand that mental health is is imperative. And the fact that we don't have it is more of an epidemic in our community with the higher rates of suicide. So we're really starting to peel all of that back. And we need to have more government influence. We need more African Americans participating and becoming practitioners in health. Not everyone has to become a doctor. We have so many committed nurse practitioners and allied health professionals that are willing to make that difference. So let's not overlook any of those people. Lastly, it's important that we participate in clinical trials. For so long, the whole system, and again, you asked what precision medicine is. The foundations of precision medicine were based on a European standard of genetics. So we're trying to understand why we're taking various medications and we're just not getting better. We're not understanding what rare disease is and how prevalent it is. I guess if I were to ask 5 women, what is lupus? They would say they don't know. But if you ask them what is breast cancer, they know. But lupus impacts about 1 in every 200 Black women in this country. So there's so much around that conversation. So what Black Health Matters looks to do is to help educate and elevate conversations so that we can come together. Let me just say this, Pat, that the benefits of participating in clinical trials are clear and evident. We can then shift because doctors will have an understanding of our physiology and what works based on, it could be of Caribbean extraction or Southern extraction, whatever the models are, we can get more insight into how to treat Black folks. We can improve disease detection by participating in clinical trials. We can preempt disease progression. We can customize disease prevention strategies and prescribe more effective drug therapies for people because they have participated in clinical trials. So I know there is a mistrust of the medical system, but let me tell you, the government is in it. And, we're talking business. We're here at MOBE. The country is only going to be a certain percentage Caucasian for so long. It makes sense for pharma to understand the physiology of people of color so that they can benefit as they need prescription medications through their lifespan, if that is what that patient calls for. So there really is interest there. It's done in earnest to really understand why we have these disease states, and we need to really support all messaging and participate in clinical trials.
Well, we know in addition to talking to us, you're talking to Big Pharma too, and you have questions, and we appreciate that. So keep asking them. And the last thing I wanted to ask you was just, can you tell us any resources and emphasize Black Health Matters, because I know you provide a great number of resources that we can use to improve our health.
So I'm going to say that, and I get very emotional, and thank you for asking that question. I've seen over the last several years, we have churches that are screening people every single Sunday for COVID and providing vaccines. That didn't happen before, right? So more and more churches have some active health initiatives. So let's look there. We're looking at fraternities and sororities. We have programs that are happening on the state or city level that we can go to. And of course, you have companies, organizations like blackhealthmatters.com. We are a content provider, so we have more than 2,000 pages on our website that focus on the Black health experience. We also do our summits, and we're very big in social media because the goal is to have everything that we do go viral. And if something comes up in your news feed and it's self-reflective, you might think, I might be interested in learning more about why I need to be fit, or why I need to eat better, or what questions I need to ask my doctor. So now, don't trust all social media, but there are authentic voices out there. Do your research, do your homework, because again, I remember when the pandemic started, the first urban myth was Black folks don't get COVID. Do you all remember that?
Vaguely at this point, right?
That was kind of conventional wisdom. So do your research, ask questions, and surround yourself with like-minded people. and you will find, information that will help improve your lifestyle and give you a certain quality of life.
Yeah, so remember that Black health matters. And thank you so much. And speaking of questions, we're going to allow you to pose questions to the members of our panel after I'm done talking to Michael, who I know deals with all of these issues that we're talking about right now and a whole lot more in his work with the LA Urban League. Michael, something that a lot of us are thinking about is, we just got rid of that last election a minute ago, but we've got elections coming up. We've got midterms and eventually another presidential election, a lot of important local elections as well that I don't think people pay enough attention to. What do we need to know right now as Black Americans about the threats that are facing voter rights?
Thank you very much for that introduction. It's always a pleasure talking with you and being interviewed by you. You're one of the best out there.
Thank you.
We are in a situation where a lot of states are trying to push us back to the Jim Crow years. And they are going to do everything they can to suppress our vote, to prevent us from registering to vote, to prevent us from getting to the polls, to prevent us from using absentee ballots. They are going to use every trick in the book. And the fact of the matter is we just have to fight back. Every person needs to register. Every person needs to fill out the ballots. They need to make sure that their ballots are taken to the polls. And if we don't, first of all, they will continue to try to cheat. But we can win this. Right now, we have a Black man and a Jewish man who are representing Georgia in Congress as senators. How did that happen? Because Stacey Abrams went to work and got everybody involved and got everybody energized, and we outvoted them. The fact of the matter is, the competition is trying to put all these roadblocks up against us because they know that they can't win a fair fight. So if we get out there and get the vote out and don't let anybody, cousins, brothers, sisters, people that you went to high school with, make sure that they are registered, make sure that they vote and get out there, and we will continue to rise. But we have to do the work, and we have to know that this is going to be a fight.
Yeah, you mentioned being energized, something that a lot of people struggle with today. I know that the majority of us do not align ourselves with the Republicans, but also rising numbers of us are looking at the Democrats and trying to figure out what they're doing as well. And those things considered, how do we prepare for the upcoming midterm elections? And what are some of the concrete things that we can do to counteract this attack on our ability to vote across the board?
Well, the Democrats in Congress have been doing their work. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act of 2021 is an effort to change what the Supreme Court did and put limits on what states can do to basically keep our vote from being counted. So, but that vote got passed the House. It did not get passed in the Senate because the Republicans have enough votes to keep it from being passed. We're going to continue to try to get that statute passed, but in the meantime, we just have to keep on fighting the way we've been fighting for the past 50 years. And there can be nobody that's sitting on the sidelines complaining that, they're not going to count your vote. They're not going to count your vote if you don't vote. But make no mistake, there is a Black woman who is vice president of the United States. There is a Black woman who's going to be on the Supreme Court. And that is happening because we came out to vote every single time. We have a tendency, when I say we, I mean the entire country, has a tendency to get a little lackadaisical during the midterms. We cannot be lackadaisical during these midterms. We have to come out as if this were a presidential election, and make
kind
sure
of
that
is.
it absolutely is. It absolutely is, and no one can be left on the sidelines. No one can be left on the sidelines.
I think you're also underscoring the importance of our local elections and knowing what's going on. Because based on everything you said, we really need to work on those Senate numbers and try to preserve and build on the numbers in the House as well. What are some of the misconceptions about critical race theory, which we're hearing a lot about? I was on a panel yesterday where we discussed that. And how do we get this information across in spite of the attempts to block it?
Critical race theory. Basically, it is a theory that began in the law schools, where the question was, even though you don't have Jim Crow laws on the books that actually were designed to, and without apology, were intended to hold us back. Critical race theory says those vestiges still apply because of the laws that we have, and although they don't use racial language, they have racial impact. Critical race theory is just fact. Critical race theory is just the truth. And the evidence of this is the extent to which the right wing of the Republican Party, or I may not even label it that way, but the way this country has grown up is grown up in an environment where they ignore all of these things. They don't talk about the tragedy of Black Wall Street, Greenwood. In 1919, 1920, 21, that was a summer of white mobs destroying Black townships that were thriving. And everybody knows, and Professor Richardson knows, that in terms of financial application, a loss is worse than a small loss is worse than not getting a higher gain. So what we lost when Greenwood was destroyed, when Rosewood was destroyed, when countless other townships were destroyed, we lost the wealth that was going to be passed on to the next generation and the generation after that. So the loss that we suffered has been multiplied. And if you lived in Tulsa, if you grew up in Tulsa, you didn't hear a thing about it. So critical race theory is just about telling the truth. Critical race theory is about telling our students and the world that when the Europeans came over, there was a genocidal attack on the Native Americans. Critical race theory is talking about the fact that Columbus wasn't the first one to hit the American shores. Africans were in South America 800 years before Columbus got to North America, and he was lost. He thought he was in India. Critical race theory is about is just about telling the truth. I remember when I was in the 8th grade, I was reading, we were assigned to just do some quiet reading. And this was in the history class. And I read this paragraph that said, we were studying European history, and the paragraph said, the Moors controlled Spain for 800 years. One sentence. And my 8th grade brain said, you don't control something for 800 years. It's yours. But that's the way they wrote it. Under that theory, the Europeans have controlled North America for 400 years, but it's not theirs. So critical race theory is nothing but telling the truth. I spend a fair amount of time talking to young students. And at the end of my talk, I'll say, I'm going to teach you how to write in another language. And I said, you can't do that. I said, take out your pencils. I said, I'm going to teach you how to write in Arabic in particular. I said, take out your pencils and write down your phone number. And they write it down. And I said, you just wrote in Arabic. What are you talking about? I said, these are Arabic numerals. When I was in the first grade, they taught us two types of numerals. They taught us Roman numerals and they taught us Arabic numerals. And at some point, the teachers stopped calling them Arabic numerals. And that is intentional. So when you talk about critical race theory, talk about telling the truth about where things came from. You can't learn geometry without learning about the Greek culture. You have to learn algebra, but they won't tell you where it came from. It is tragic. It is a tragedy that we allowed this to happen. The fact of the matter is, I give a lot of credit to our Jewish brothers and sisters who said, we will not let you whitewash the Holocaust. We will not let that go unspoken. And we have to do the same thing. All critical race theory is telling the truth. Ms. Prescott? I think she's frozen. Or should I continue talking? Mr. Richardson,
we do have some questions that are coming in from Facebook.
Okay.
And until Ms. Prescott is able to rejoin us, let's go to a couple of those questions.
So I'm looking in.
So one is a comment. Wanted to thank Roslyn for all that you do with Black Health Matters. The platforms are awesome, and the organization is truly changing lives with your platform and your virtual hybrid health summit. So kudos to you from one of our Facebook commenters. And for Lanier, we wanted to know what has been Big Pharma's commitment to racial wealth equity, such as Johnson & Johnson, Roche, Novartis, Merck, AbbVie, Bristol Myers, Sanar, Pfizer, and so forth.
It's a great question. So again, we initially focused on financial institutions and tech companies and some of the retailers, just because they were in the papers all the time. But I know, this sector approach, right? Because everybody wants to be measured against their peers. I would love to get, the big pharma companies that you named, maybe add a few more. Again, I think, as I said, this work is not one and done or one time. We want to continue to sort of, push it out. And, thank you to the people on this call, to the people in the MOBE audience who completed the survey. You can't imagine how hard it is to get people to take. It was 8 minutes just to, do you know, have you heard? So I am sure we're going to do big pharma. I had someone ask me about where our insurance companies were, and so I think we're going to continue to try to do these sector-based, surveys, put them out for 3 or 4 weeks, try to get 500 or 600 people, figure out who, of this list, is Johnson & Johnson doing more than, Pfizer? To get some, reactions and see if, we can answer those specific questions.
Thank you. The next one is a two-parter. The first part is for Roslyn. With our historic mistrust of experimentation, how do we get and raise awareness for the Black community, Black and Brown specifically, to go ahead and join the clinical trials? And what are some of the benefits of that?
There are many benefits, but can I just double back for 1 second? Just
Of
to
course.
respond to Dr. Richardson's comments regarding pharma and their commitment to diversity. What we are seeing is that there is a great commitment to diversity in terms of the life sciences business. There are various diversity councils that have that are active and looking to invite minority suppliers. There are billion-dollar roundtables happening specifically with Bristol Myers Squibb, organizations like Pfizer, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson. They are all actively looking for partners within the space to fulfill whatever their needs are in terms of marketing or data or research. So as this is a MOBE Monday, if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to, look at something new or get more active in terms of the life sciences, we definitely would encourage you to do so. In terms of the question about clinical trials, everything that you have in your medicine cabinet right now has been in a clinical trial, whether it be cough medicine, whether it be aspirin, all of those products were actually in a trial at one point. The patient is not in trial, the product is on clinical trials. So participation, especially for conditions where you don't see advances, had been a part of race. So for example, I mentioned lupus. Again, about 1 in every 200 Black women have lupus. Guess how many therapies there are on the market right now for people who have lupus? You want to guess? Less than 2. So why is that? Is it because it's an illness that more African Americans have than any other ethnicity has? It could be. But they can't make progress unless we raise our hands and participate in clinical trials. So it's very important. That's how we're going to be able to test the efficacy, if something is really going to work, if there are going to be side effects. And we're also looking at, I don't want to use the C word, but it's so promising, which is cure. I don't know if I am a cancer survivor. And because I went to I would have to say an NCI cancer center. And again, if anyone out here is not well or has some kind of issue with cancer, look for an NCI cancer center because they have a level of standard in which they deal with their patients. And so there are so many advances. And I am here today to say women who had my type of cancer 10 years ago would not be sitting in my chair. So because they were able to, science has been able to diagnose and treat various types of illnesses, more people will live. So there are, Black women have more rates of fibroids, endometrial cancer, cervical cancer. Please don't make me go on. So if we rallied and said, we want options that will make a difference in my life and the life of my daughter and my friends, we would see that. And so by participating in clinical trials and being vocal, we are on our path to more advances that will be impactful for the African American community.
I apologize for leaving you for a second there. We had a power outage, but just came back. Thank you. I have a question for Michael. Michael, how does this current international conflict affect Black Americans? We've been seeing some troubling images in the last couple of days of some really differential treatment depending on the color of your skin if you're in Ukraine.
What is the old phrase? Same stuff, different day. This is a continuation of what has been going on in the world coming out of Europe. The attacks on Black and brown people has been continued for a long time. You couple that with the the outright lies that you're hearing coming out of Russia, and the reluctance of the European countries to take in and help the people who are being just decimated in these countries. What's happening in Ukraine is similar to what has been happening in the Middle East, and what is a carryover for what happened in Africa, and to say South America as well. So we are still fighting this fight. There are allies. There are good people out there. I am not distinguishing between black and white as good and bad. But the fact of the matter is, we have made a lot of progress over the past 100 years. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But we continue on. We are where we are because our ancestors stood up and fought the fight. And we will be able to take this fight further because of the strength that they gave us.
Yeah.
But there is no question that we are seeing it again. We're seeing European countries being concerned about, do we let these people who have a choice of leave Ukraine or die, leave Afghanistan or die, leave other countries that are still struggling with how they want to govern themselves, or die, and we're making the wrong choices. So we have to stand up for our brothers and sisters, and it's happening right here in the United States as well. But make no mistake, I've spoken to a lot of young, at the Urban League, we spend a lot of time dealing with youth. And a lot of them will say from time to time, it's never been this bad. And I have to remind them, the only way you can say that is because you don't know your history. It was much worse. Our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents suffered a lot more, and they fought a lot harder. And we have to do the same thing.
And they made it through. And
they made
we're
it
here
through.
as proof of that. So we've got a little bit of time left. And what we'd like to do with that time is I'd like to just go to each of you for some closing comments. Want to thank you not only for sharing with us today, but for the hard work that you do in our communities. I mean, it's a choice. You're all seasoned professionals. You could be doing a number of things, but you have chosen to be involved in service to our community. And I just want to say on behalf of everyone who's with us today, and even those who are not, that we appreciate that choice, and we appreciate the effort that you put into the things that you're doing, and your willingness to share with all of us. So we'll start with you, Lyneir. Any closing thoughts?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Sorry.
Okay. It's muted again.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Okay, sorry. Look, this is a moment and a movement, right? And we got to maximize the moment, right? We got to continue to raise issues, to speak unapologetically about this. I mean, again, even 3 years ago, we could not have been as specific and intentional about Black economic and Black racial justice initiative. So we got to maximize the moment and extend the moment as long as we can to make it a movement. My party comments.
All right, Roslyn. And before you make yours, just one more question for you. Someone is asking in the chat, what is an NCI organization?
So a National Cancer Institute, those are centers that are sanctioned and governed by the United States. And so if you have cancer, or or you're not sure, you want to go to one of those designated hospitals within your community, or travel to get to one, because they're going to offer you some of the highest standard of care possible so that you can confront the disease and be on the path to recovery.
And any closing thoughts from you?
Thank you. And it's been wonderful to meet the panelists this evening, and so wonderful to spend time with you, Pat Prescott. I would say that I do this work because I had grandparents that left too soon. And I remember my parents being very proud Black educators, and they were, solid in their churches and, very demonstrative about who they were. But when they came to being in the hospital and at my grandmother's bedside, they were a mess. They had no language, no facility. They didn't know how to advocate for her. It was unfathomable. And that feeling of isolation and helplessness just stayed with me. So that when I saw that the ACA became a reality, I felt that this was the time to make that step so that we could become healthier as a community, as a people. And we want to thank the Black Health Matters family, friends, and associates that help us to do the work that we do.
Michael, I know you're preparing your State of Black LA, and I know that you are deeply involved in seeing where we are and how we get to where we're headed. Closing thoughts from you.
This was a wonderful panel. I learned a lot, and your questions were great. We at the Los Angeles Urban League, as you say, are putting together our State of Black LA report. We have been in Los Angeles for 100 years, and we have set a goal for ourselves to do no less than to rebuild Greenwood and turn South Los Angeles into an economic juggernaut. It is not going to happen without the help of the people on this panel and the people who are listening. And please support us in this endeavor. Buy Black, bake Black, and continue to move forward. We will continue to do what our ancestors started. And I have no doubt that we will succeed.
Got to believe that as we move forward. Thank you all for being with us. I'm going to turn it back over to Raul now.
But, this was a wonderful panel. Thank you guys for sharing your time with us today. In the 30 years of MOBE, we have been about cooperative economics. The first 10 years, over $200 million in deals were done at MOBE. And so we look forward to bringing that back April 21st to 22nd. You can register online at mobe.com. MOBE is also under the umbrella of our nonprofit Real Men Charities. We talk about health all the time, try to contribute to the mental health, physical health, and financial health of our community. We definitely have talked about the disparities, 5-year life expectancy difference between Black men and the general population. In some places in Chicago, there are a 30-year gap in life expectancy in some neighborhoods in Chicago. So that's very important. And then what you said about voting, Mr. Lawson, I think, one thing that we have to put on our agenda is the midterms, because the midterms is where we fall off. We sometimes become disillusioned by I guess the elections. A lot of it is built up hype. A lot of it is marketing. We know the president can't do all the things that he promises by himself, and it takes the Congress and the Senate to make a difference. So we cannot be disillusioned. This is a generational fight. It's not a 4-year fight. It's generational, and there's a midterm every 2 years. So get ready for that this year. And then last but not least, Lanier, we look forward to holding corporations responsible, because there were billions and billions of dollars of commitments that were made after the death of George Floyd. We saw a lot of people get hired into these DEI positions, chief diversity officers galore around the planet, and we want to give them the backing, the power to actually make things happen. We want them to be able to make decisions. We want them to have the budgets to do the things and put the money where their mouth is. So I want to just thank you, Pat, for you being esteemed radio personality to take your time with us today. It's just a preview of what's going to occur for the 30th anniversary of MOBE. And one of those people that's making history is why can I think of the name? And it's gonna hurt me. Okay, Byron Allen, who owns the Weather Channel. A Black man owns the Weather Channel, and he'll be on a fireside chat at MOBE April 21st to 22nd. On the 22nd, he'll be on. So make sure you go to mobesymposium.com and register today, and look forward to this. Thank you as we end Black History Month. We know that Black history is a 365-day agenda. So please continue to move forward. I'll recommend the book 1619. It's been a very, very great read. And thank you guys for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Good night.
Thank you for joining MOBE Mondays. Good evening. Okay.